All right, we rolling? All right, guys. Looks like very familiar ones. I'm Roy. I'm Hoop, KJ5IUL. I'm glad you guys are here today. We've wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on in Oklahoma City Meshtastic. Including yesterday, we put up a node on the Edmond granary, which is in downtown Edmond at 130 feet. WY6Y, Stephen and I, and KP4 DJT, Chuck right here, climbed up there at 130 feet and battled the winds and got that node up. We've been receiving some feedback from some members of the group here. I think Yuri was one of them. So I think one of the things we might want to break out into and discuss today is what role we might want to set that node to. Is at client right now. The node's at client. So given the height and where it's located, there's been some suggestions we move it to a router mode. So we wanted to maybe engage Jeff Scoville. Jeff is with us from the Tulsa Meshtastic group, and Jeff today is going to go over Meshtastic setup settings, which would be included but not limited to roles for node placement and like for the node we put up yesterday. Is anyone here for the first time? Okay, all right. Why don't we just go ahead and go around the room and give your name and call sign if you've got one, and we'll just start from left to right. For those of you that don't know, we also have a website that Matthew and Chris have created. It is www.okiemesh.org, okay? And it's pretty much a fork of the Tulsa Meshtastic site. It's got best practices. It essentially mirrors their site. Just set up that locally here. We also have, we've got a Telegram channel where there's several of us that are communicating. If you guys would like access to that, please leave your info and we can make sure we share that with you. One of the things I also wanted to discuss was, and get Jeff's feedback on this probably, or some of the other group members' feedback, setting up a Oklahoma City Meshtastic channel with a shared key, allowing users to maybe, that are part of the regular attendees of this meeting, to communicate within that group. I don't know how that works or how you're setting those up, so that's one of the things I'm looking for your feedback today. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. He's going to give a presentation on setup, settings, and best practices. So AE5ME, Jeff Scoville.
All right, thank you. Now I get to pick up the mic.
Yes, sir.
All right. A funny story about microphones. At our workplace, we do a lot of Teams meetings, and they always want to make sure we've got a microphone and all of that. And one of the people that was very much a stickler microphone, they took their microphone, and the way they set it up, they had it, and they had a really bad habit of taking their arm across here like this. So they'd be talking all their meeting. Times, and they didn't get the signal that there was a problem perhaps there, and I was like, yeah, you're hurting our ears right now. So TulsaMeshtastic.com is our website, and if you go to that website, right on the first page is starting settings, so it's very easy to get there. We've got QR codes, 2 QR codes, one for add, the other for replace channels. And so literally you can just take your phone, your tablet, scan those codes. That's the easy way to do things. But I did want we've seen so far in setups, kind of the direction that we're heading as far as the network is concerned. The first things first is long and ask, because some people have experimented with other things on their channels, and there's actually a graph that is published out on the internet that explains why long fast is where we're operating at. And essentially for the link budgets that we have and the speed that we're trying to operate, it's kind of a good mix between, yes, I get good distance coverage, but at the same time, I've got a good data rate, because as you go faster, your coverage drops down. As you go slower, your coverage goes out. But then there's a certain point where actually, even though you have talking so slow that the network gets congested and nobody can get in anyway. So long fast is kind of the good, happy in between. You can experiment with some other stuff out there, but you know, it's one of those deals that the experience has shown that long fast is pretty good there. First thing you're going to do is get yourself a radio, and this comes up, and I would encourage people, if you've got friends that are looking to get radios, go up to the TulsaMeshtastic.com website. We list all the different radios, the features of those, and we even do a side-by-side comparison just to say, this is what you get with this is what you get with the other one. For example, I had a gentleman who said, my node is always going to be plugged into the wall wart, it's never going to be portable with me. Well, power isn't a big thing to him. So the LilyGos are great there with the ESP32s that are power hungry, whereas other people that are like, I'm going to be portable, I'm going to be battery operation all the time, you know, definitely go down the WISBlock direction because, you know, the power from that is much less. Almost a factor of 10 difference right there. So you see considerable difference. Basically, we take you step by step through the Apple iOS and the Android applications, but once you get Bluetooth paired to your equipment, the first thing you're going to do is make sure that your LoRa settings are to the United States, not to another country. Believe it or not, there will be people that just hit the drop down and they end up in the wrong place, and that can be a problem.
Randomly set to Russia.
Yeah.
And this one had no region set when I booted it.
Yep. Your presets to long range fast. You're gonna say the ignore MQTT feature. You're gonna turn it off because you may decide later at a time to use MQTT. Basically, okay to MQTT, you'll leave on as well, but it's your individual choice. I would highly recommend against going to the central MQTT servers and setting up your node on it and saying, hey, let's go wide open and kill our local network with it. But you can set up a local server, and it's relatively easy to do, and that's what we're actually doing in the Tulsa area is we'll have a local server. We've held off intentionally, mainly because I didn't want people just to go to their Wi-Fi network and never really try to put out antennas and things like that. So we kind of wanted to make people get to the point of being on the radio. Transmit enables on. No, there. These are not the type of hops that go into the beer. These are the number of hops where the transmission goes there. But 4 seems to be a good in-between area there. If you go lower, the problem you're going to run into is, let's say you only put 2. You're only going to have 2 hops out and you're gone. You're probably not going to be able to utilize the most of your network. On the other hand, if you put it out to, I think 7 is the highest number, 6 or 7 is the highest number, unless you have a very good setup of your network, there is a high likelihood that you're going to congest things and have issues and problems. And we have some people that's like, hey, more is better, and they take it all the way to the right, and it's like, no, you don't really want to do that without creating congestion. Frequency transmit work. There used to be some issues in the firmware that if you didn't set it exactly to the dBm required by your device, there could be a problem, but that one works well there. You're going to go to your primary channel and say positions enabled on, because if you don't, it won't transmit your positions. It's your own choice on this. We recommend for anybody that has security concerns and things of that sort that you can put the approximation into 0.9 miles, and that just basically puts an error function in there that people can't see exactly where you're at as far as that's concerned. I would say that wasn't a big deal until I had an experience several years ago in APRS in which I had somebody that literally saw my exact location, and it was kind of bizarre, and they had to have a talking to by law enforcement not to stalk and do things of that sort. But so that's one of those deals. It's your own personal choice there. I don't recommend posting location publicly if you can help it right there, just because there are concerns about we have weird people these days type thing. Then the next thing you're going to do is add a channel, because you have your we made a channel called and for the AQ equal, which is the same as the key on the default channel, so it's kind of wide open at this point. But our intent is once we get a base group of users, we'll send out an email with a new key every month, and basically they'll be responsible for changing their keys to work on that particular channel. So that allows you some control there. It will be what's called that is set up. Back to what we did in Tulsa, you guys don't have to do this. You can do anything you want to, it's free world. But what we did was we used the local airport code, and it's always a 3-letter code, and then we followed it by numbers 0 through 9, capital A through capital Z, or lowercase a through lowercase z, which gives you, I believe, 58 different for a given airport. And believe it or not, you have multiple airports in a given area, so in most cases you're not going to use those up in the foreseeable future. Repeat the short name again. The reason we do this is that way if there's multiple people that have a node with the same location, if you just gave the 3 words as your location, if you had multiple nodes, they would all have the same long code on them. So we start out with in my case, TUL0, then my 3 words, and then that's what my long name is there as far as that's concerned. Big question into client is the preferred way to run. If you're doing infrastructure, you would be potentially looking at router. Repeater really doesn't seem to be a really good setting to use, so we stay away from that one. The one caveat you have with client is it will repeat everything that it hears, which is part of the reason why we discourage on individuals, because there is some items in the firmware that prevent that from happening so that signals can get out to a further location, and so you don't necessarily want to be repeating everything that comes along. When you start interval, 60 minutes, not 1 minute, because if you do 1 minute intervals, you will send a whole bunch of information to the network, especially if you're a fixed node. There's really no reason that you need to send it out more than once an hour. Go ahead.
Hey Jeff, you said that you weren't, that client mode isn't like the ideal mode for most nodes. Would you say client mute?
No, client mode is either router or repeater for an individual node, but client is pretty good. Client's one of the best modes right there. In most cases, most people will set up as client as opposed to repeater or router. Router and repeater are really designed for high sites, and even then you got to think your infrastructure through before you just totally go nuts on that. We've seen some people even go back from using router mode back to client and had better success with it even on high sites. So there's nothing currently in the system that makes them that much better than client, and there are some things in it that if improperly used can actually congest your network, so you have to walk a fine line there. Let's see here. Position, like I said, minimum interval 30 minutes, minimum distance 100. So once again, you don't want to every time you're moving, a few feet, or GPS tells you that you moved a few feet. You don't want this thing going, hey, let's send out another item there. And then make sure that you've got one that we're seeing happen is a lot of people don't enable their GPS, and so they wonder why they're not actually sending out any information. However, caveat to that is that's if you're a mobile node. If you're putting up a node that's solar powered at your location on your house and everything else, turn the GPS off and just put your location in, because there's nothing to be added unless we have another New Madrid earthquake that moves everything a few feet or whatever. Don't need to do that. But then once you're done, send a message, on one of the channels. We have the, primary channel out there, and then also our secondary that we can send stuff to the entire group. One of the things that we're kind of finding that we do within our system there, just to understand whether or not we're getting to somebody, is we will send some private messages within the system, because you will get an acknowledgement back from the recipient, versus if you just send out a flooded message to a primary group, you will get an acknowledgement because the nearest node that you sent it to acknowledged to you, but you don't know if it made it to, somebody up in Owasso, somebody over here in Oklahoma City. You have no idea on that. Go ahead.
On the private messages, for the people that are just starting out, is that actually, you will actually go onto the node, hold down to the node, and then use the menu option to send the message directly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be on the Android.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's on the.
I can't get it to work. work like that.
Yeah. And you say private, and then underneath there you pick the node.
Drives me nuts too.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird way to do it, but it works. So. But we use private messaging quite a bit when we need to know that that message actually went through. Now, curiously enough, there are some cases where you'll send a message through and it'll say it's only acknowledged by your neighbor, but they'll get it anyway because the acknowledgement didn't make it back to you. So that doesn't always mean they didn't get it. But if you don't see an acknowledgement, you don't know for sure that it went on through. So if you have mission critical information going across there, you're going to look for the acknowledgement and retry until you get on through. So that's one of the disadvantages of sending a group message to everybody is you don't know if everybody got it. So if you were using this for emergency management or something in which somebody needs critical information, we would actually rather send out individual messages to each of them and get acknowledgements as opposed to sending a group message and perhaps finding out that 2 or 3 people did get it. Let's see, that covers a quick talk. As I said, don't connect to the main server and then flood your local location with it. However, it is a very powerful tool to tie things together. If you come up with your own private MQTT server, you can actually back-to-back tie 2 of these nodes together on different channels, different frequencies. And there are some people, go ahead.
Myself and Matt have actually been working on that this past week.
Yeah.
Tying 2 overlapping MQTT nodes.
Exactly. And that's neat to do there. There's some people that are doing work on this out west and having good success with it. I think what we're going to see over a period of time, and this is lessons learned from back in the days when we did APRS in amateur radio, which was great in the 1980s, but as we got older and older with it, realized there were some things that could have been done better. And one of the big things about it is what's called hidden transmitter syndrome. I've actually been reading a lot up on the LoRa specification to understand how much hidden transmitters are a problem versus FM and other modes of modulation. Hidden transmitter basically says when you have a high site for a node, it can see what's going on in the entire area, but those individual nodes cannot see each other. And the problem you run into is if 2 of them transmit at the exact same time, one or the other is going to win the race, and the other one's not going to be heard. And themselves listen for other traffic. So if nodes are about the same elevation, same power, everything else, in theory, oh, I hear my neighbor transmitting over there, so I'm not going to say anything right now. I'm going to wait till they get finished. Well, if my neighbor's way up in the air and my neighbor's getting stuff for 25 or 30 miles, they may be getting stuff and I don't hear it on my radio. My radio's sitting there trying to blast in there. And so I've looked at the protocol. I don't know how many people have looked at the protocol in LoRa and just kind of understood the chirp thing that goes with it. Good. The thing I find fascinating about it is the frequency shift up, the ramp up that it does to send things, because for those of us that worked with frequency shift key modes that were fixed frequencies, one of the biggest problems you ever had was if the frequencies fell right on top of each other in a multiplied environment, you sometimes got multiple transmitters interfering with each other. The great thing about chirp is because they're all ramping up at different times, in theory you should be able to receive multiple transmitters simultaneously and not have nearly the issues with collisions that you do in an FM system, or for that matter, frequency shift key or phase shift key type systems that are very fixed where they operate. But all the same, one of the things we're finding in Tulsa, like with our very tall location we have at 670 feet, is that more people are hearing what's coming out of it distance-wise away than are necessarily able to make it back the other way, which we think is a function of so much traffic hitting that particular node. We also may have some desensitization going on because we're exposed to a high RF environment. That being said, I'll close out what I had to say about settings here, and this ties into setting up of nodes and things. We had a big spirited discussion last night about filters, and there's an outfit on eBay and another outfit over on, I'm trying to remember what the storefronts are, but I'll send a link out after we get out of here. But there's a place that actually sells what looks like a duplexer for 440 megahertz band. If you ever remember the old ambulances had the little UHF radio system, looks just like that, except it's a 900 megahertz filter system, and it's got 65 dB rejection once you only get 3 or 4 megahertz away from where you're transmitting, which is outstanding.
What's insertion loss?
2.5 decibels. So it's, you know, you're going to take a hit for it, but it's not the end of the world type thing there. But 2.5 decibels is how much insertion loss. But now you get 65 dB rejection. If you had an 800 megahertz or even a close 900 megahertz, like a studio transmitter link or whatever close to you, that should keep you from clobbering your front end receive and not hearing anything. So. But we had a big discussion about it last night, and they're selling them now for $85 a piece, which is very inexpensive. You know, I've seen Pasternak Enterprises and people like that sell them for $400, $500, and that's the reason why he can retire.
So what was the verdict? Are you guys going to implement any of those? Or?
Yeah, we're going to implement those. They're out of stock right now, but as soon as they get them in stock, we're planning to purchase as a group those and put them on sites and test them and see. Yeah. Hey, does this make an impact? Does this do it? The neat thing is we're experimenting with this, trying to figure out all the ins and outs there.
I've got another question. Between iOS app and the Android app, they kind of handle setting up the primary channel name different.
Yes.
On iOS, it's just primary, or I think it's primary channel. And then yeah. And then on Android, it's long fast.
Yeah.
Is that causing them to talk to each other, or no?
No.
No issue.
Actually, that channel is empty. It's a user interface that shows your name.
Yeah.
Okay. So just leave it the way it
So
is.
so even if you change the name, you're not going to get lost right there. Yeah. Yeah. But
It actually affects your frequency slot.
yes.
So basically, if you type primary channel, you will change your frequency slot, which means
Yeah.
you will not hear anyone.
Exactly. That would get you in the problem there.
So that means that the people who changes their primary channel will not hear anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that means at that point, yeah, you don't want to be messing around and change your key or do something like that, because we had some people that changed their key on there and they're like, well, yeah, I'm private now. Yeah, you can't even hear what other people are saying here. So really that primary channel is intended to be left factory default, move on with it.
In your Tulsa group, what is the local channel that you set up? You said it's the same shared key, the AQ?
Yeah,
equals?
yeah, it's called Tulsa Mesh. It's TULSA, capital T, capital M for the mesh, and Tulsa Mesh is what it's called, all one word. So
It's like a Oki corral here, right?
yeah.
So, Matt, NUK, anything starts in UK out of Newcastle. Myself and Chris were working on a script for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And you just have to obviously change some of the text files to your primary name or your primary channel. You have to download Python to execute the command, and it'll pre-populate everything.
Cool.
So it saves you the hassle of going in there, hit refresh.
Yeah.
You know, and just verify it has a command that actually will inform you that all the settings has been logged in for validation.
Yep.
Jeff, one of the things that I was interested in, and a few of us were discussing, is have you in the Tulsa group tested different devices and
Yes.
gotten any data on which ones work better, more consistently? And how are you determining what works best? Are you using
A lot of it's anecdotal right now, but our plan is down the line to actually set them up side by side and in a controlled environment with a controlled location from there, determine which ones, you know, most of the time make the connection, some of the times don't make the connection. We're planning to do some more things down that direction. Just anecdotally, what we've found is that we don't see a huge difference between the devices in terms of ability to hit a location, but we do see a big difference, number one, in battery usage, depending upon whether or not you're using ESP32 versus what's used over on the Wiz blocks, because that's a much lower power consumption item. As far as sensitivity, everything is within about 2 to 4 decibels of each other, so there's nobody that's just way up, way low as far as that's concerned. So we haven't seen a tremendous difference there. In the LilyGo product line, for example, I believe, transmitted at 22 dB, and then the T-Beam Supreme is now 24 dB. I mean, it's a small, because they went to the SX 1262 chips, whereas a lot of the stuff started out as the SX 1278s and 1270. I think there's 1272 as well. And the 1270 series, even though it's got a higher number, is actually the predecessor to the 1260 series. The 1260 has a little bit higher transmitting power, and you pick up about 2 decibels on the receive side, which is nice, but it's not going to, in an urban environment, it's not going to be a huge difference that you suddenly picked up 3 miles worth of coverage over 10 miles that you didn't have before. It's going to be in the range of maybe 1 mile to 1.5 miles in a high elevation application where you've got good line of sight. So.
Have you ever tried putting one on an existing 900 megahertz antenna and feed line on a tower? I'm not sure how the feed line might work.
We're not doing anything with feed lines because of that. Primarily, we're trying to keep our losses down. So even if we did have the feed line going up there, we would elect not to at this point. But I know you're trying to do something of that sort. So
We got a tower that has an antenna that we don't have access to climb the tower, but the
Yeah.
feed line feeds into the equipment room.
Yeah. Yeah, I would look first at what feed line is that and find out what your losses are going to be going up to there. And if they're in the range of less, and I know, like, for example, what I'm used to working with is like 2-inch heliacs. You know, that feed line loss was on the order of 2 to 3 decibels, which isn't going to be much, and I wouldn't lose sleep over it. So if you've got like 1.25 or 1.5 hard line going up there, unless, you know, even if you're running up several hundred feet, it's not going to probably be a deal breaker for you. You'd probably be in good shape right there.
Minimum of 2 inch, but I know it's being an active cell tower and multiple repeaters, so it would need a filter on it.
You definitely are going to need a filter right there because you're going to have adjacent stuff that's going to be all over the place.
Jeff, go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I've got quite a few neighbors that are interested. And obviously what one of us grabs because of our technical interest is not the same as what somebody might be interested in that has no technical background.
Mm-hmm.
So what is a good all-around device that you can recommend and not have to end up giving a series of training sessions?
The Heltex are very good for setup there, but you go with the version 3. The WizBlock Pocket is an excellent thing. It's got its own case, everything else there. Over on the LilyGos, the T-Beams or the T-Echoes are an excellent purchase. It's kind of an all-in-one, everything's there. The great thing about the T-Beams, any of the T-Beams, the Supreme or even back several versions, is you've got a battery case right in the back of it. You don't have to sit there and solder stuff together. So for somebody starting out, those are really the best out of the box and let's go. Whereas if you buy the starter kit, for example, what do you got back there?
These are Muzzy.works.
That one's an excellent one.
Great.
Okay.
I bought one December. It would have to be reflashed every 2 days. I just got the replacement in today, so we'll see how it works.
Yeah.
But it works right out of the box.
Yeah.
Has a week's battery life. Connects
Yeah.
to your phone.
The only thing about the Muzzy.works, and I don't mean it's critical in saying it, but if you look at it, there's no display to it, like what you get with some of the others. It's only connect to the phone and go. So for somebody brand new, they might like the display, but otherwise the Muzzy.works stuff is an excellent item out there.
One of the things that someone on the Zoom meeting last night mentioned was that Rack Wireless was in process of getting their board certified for emergency management use?
Yes.
Yes.
On emergency management frequencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's work that they're going under there. In our group, we are blessed with a tremendous amount of contacts there. We, of course, have the Tulsa crew that's with us, but the other gentleman that you saw in there, Cameron, he's actually involved with a nonprofit organization that does emergency management and things of that sort. And so when he's talking to them, he's not just talking as, hey, I'm this guy out in the middle of Oklahoma, I'd like something. He's talking about, I think his organization has got to be over 1,000 members. So when he goes and talks to them, he gets their attention very quick that he's got people that can do that type of stuff. And so that'll open things up for what you call private type use, that an emergency management group on a channelized frequency would be able to do this type of stuff, which would be excellent. So.
For a brand new person like myself, just getting into this,
can you shoot me straight on my top 3 purchases that I need to make and I won't regret at a later time?
Yeah, that's the same here.
Because it sounds like I'm getting into another hobby that's
Yeah.
both time expensive and perhaps a little money.
Yeah. Well, into it, the low end ones that you'll be purchasing are in the range of $15 to $30 for the what we call the radio, which would be this right here. Here's your radio. Now you're going to start with that. They're going to give you that stubby antenna, which is not going to be a whole heck of a lot for you. So the next purchase you're going to make is an antenna that will allow you to mount it someplace and do things of that sort. So those are really your 2 largest expenses. The third expense, depending upon where you put it, what you want to work with, is what we call the power engine or the power generator. Simplest, if you're going to mount this thing, let's say in an attic in a house or whatever, your power generator is going to be a wall wart. You'll run it up there and life is easy and what have you. If you put it up on a tower, you may elect to put a battery on it that you replace every so often. That's one route to go. And then we list on our site for solar powered nodes a particular battery that has a very high capacity. Then also you're probably going to be looking at a solar cell to put on there as well. If you actually go up to tulsameshtastic.com, and I'll actually go to the page that has it and just kind of show you a screen capture here. If you go to fixed, if you look from a distance here, you'll see we actually have a bill of material. I know. But if you just look, in fact, I'll hold it closer for you. You see that big list? That's a bill of material of how to build your own solar node. So if you go to there, it's going to tell you, and it even has the cost. It's going to run $30. The antenna conversion connector, $4. Your antenna is $39. If you want to put it in a nice box, glands are $5 and $2, and what's $5 for their solar powered node, of which $30, $44 is in the battery. So you can certainly reduce that cost depending upon where you put it. So definitely go up to the site and you can look at it, get all that information, and it'll kind of give you a starting place to go into this. And the one thing I'll tell everybody up front on this, because I've been through this many times on other stuff that have come up, a year from now, 2 years from now, this technology is probably going to be obsolete. That's just the nature of the way these things work. So what you do is you find friends that you can sit there and say, hey, you know what? I'm moving up in the hobby. Do you want my old hand-me-down there? And the truth is they're probably of what they need just to get their feet wet. So that allows you to move on up and everything else there. But the point being is, yeah, a year, 2 years from now, what we're going to be talking about, the next big thing from RAC or whoever, is probably going to be significantly different from what is currently out there. So don't feel like you've got to make an investment for 7 or 8 or 10 years and it's going to last forever and everything else. I would say very much look that you're probably going to be replacing this in 2 or 3 years. So
somebody's going to try to sell me their used stuff at the end of this meeting.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been accused of doing that a few times there. What's funny is everything that I did first generation, I'm involved with M17 voice, everything we did first generation on M17, I ended up selling to people and everything else like this, and all these guys, they're actively involved, but it was funny. They're like, but you got the version 1.0 and I got the 0.1E. And I'm like, yeah, what it was brand new, so you got a deal out of the thing. But the reality is there's going to be a lot of stuff going on with it, and it's going to continue to evolve. So I would not be worried about. What I would say is, if you have the choice between buying something bulletproof that's going to last forever versus buying something that is a little bit cheaper but will serve your needs, go down that direction, because none of this stuff is going to be exactly the way it is in a few years. And so you don't want to feel bad about spending well, let me put it this way. You can go to Spec 5 and a few other people like that, and you can spend a few $100s with them that in a few years are going to be obsolete equipment, versus if you roll your own, you can probably spend $35 or $50 for a lot of the same functionality. So.
And your antenna, well, I would say you're going to spend money on anything.
The antenna.
Yeah.
Yeah, antenna is important and placement is important. So. This-
costs about as much as the
As-
sticks do.
Yeah. And the big thing about antenna, in addition to having an antenna, make sure that you mount it properly, because I still had to laugh about a gentleman who bought an antenna in the Tulsa area, and he was bragging about it, and then he was a little bit disappointed about how much range he was getting portable, until he explained to me that it was sitting horizontally on the car, polarized correctly to the rest of the world. But number two, you're inside the car. I said, did you ever think about mounting outside the car? Because the car is a big Faraday cage. So mounting, getting it outside of the location, short coax runs. Several years ago when I was working microwave and doing a lot of stuff in the microwave stuff, had a guy show up and he's like, well, I got this run of coax, so I just decided to reel it up here so that I could connect it. And I said, well, how long a run of coax do you have there? Oh, yeah, it's got to be about 100 feet or so in this whole thing. And it was all like something with a very high loss, and he's trying to run 1.2 gigahertz through it. And he's like, yeah, I don't seem to be getting much out on the other end. Well, things like feed line, that's where you spend your money on and go type thing like that.
LR400, is that okay for a feed line?
It's okay for short runs, but if you're going to be run several hundred feet, you got to get into hard line like what they're talking about. So I can tell you this much. Emergency management and police and fire over in Broken Arrow, they put up new towers. We got to be on it as amateur radio operators. And when they put those towers up, they wouldn't even consider LMR 400 or anything of that sort. On their 800 megahertz system, they went straight to 2-inch hardline. That's just what the professionals use, because LMR 400, number one, it's less lossy than the other coax that we're dealing with, but still on long runs, you're going to have losses with it. The other bad thing about it is it will get moisture inclusion to it, and you will over a period of time see degradation, whereas if you put up a hardline run 20 years, 25 years later, you're not going to have to replace it. Every LMR 400 run that I've put up has lasted a maximum of 7 years, and at the end of that time, when I actually cut into it, I had moisture coming out of the line and everything else, just because it just doesn't stand up to it. So I would go, if you're going to go long runs, but then here's the other side to it, just talking logic here. Because this needs to be so close to the antenna, and there's no downside to it being there, you're better, you have to up the tower than you are running an antenna all the way up. So if you do need to run off AC mains, you're better off running the power line up to there, plugging it in and going, rather than running a long antenna run just because it's convenient to plug into the power there. If you want to,
You can do power over Ethernet.
power over Ethernet, exactly.
Out to 300 meters, so that's
Yeah.
that's how I do it downtown, where we have a 100-foot run.
Yeah. And if you have a little bit of loss in power over Ethernet, no big deal. You have losses on your antenna, you're just not going to get out. So I recommend mount close to wherever the antenna is, and then if you can, sit there and do a solar panel or something else and just have a system that powers itself. That's why everybody's kind of going that route, is less muss, less fuss, with you and everything else as far as getting power and, you know, who's responsible for that power, the safety and everything that goes with it. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
What does management look like if you mount a node up high like that? Like if you need to update the firmware, do you have to go retrieve the node, or is there ways to do it from a distance?
Believe on the firmware, I don't believe that the application does the updates on the firmware well, that I remember on the whole thing. Has anybody had experience of being able to do an update to the firmware? Huh?
It fails.
It fails, okay. So yeah, you're kind of stuck in the situation of having to do the firmware update on your computer, plugged in, what have you there.
So if you were running like power over Ethernet to that site, could you per se have like a Raspberry Pi in the same location?
Yes.
That has
Yes.
connection to it?
Yes, you could do it that way.
You
In fact,
module.
Modules you have to trigger to update, so
yeah, the trick I do
complicates.
The trick I do with mine is I have a Raspberry Pi right adjacent to it there, and so I actually have Wi-Fi going to the Raspberry Pi, great, and then my Raspberry Pi, like you said, has a serial connection to it, so I can sit there and go right on in and do everything local there, and it just works great. And that's just kind of the world we're going to have to live in for a while. Raspberry Pi is, generally speaking, even if you're going up on a tower and stuff, I have a Raspberry Pi at the 400-foot location on a tower. It's actually mounted all the way up there. and we've never had problems with it. We've been running it, knock on wood, for 5 years now and not had an issue. So generally speaking, if you provide it good power feed and everything else, you'll have good experience with it there. Back in the corner.
I was gonna say, I had like a 1 out of 5 experience with an RF application for updating the racks over Wi-Fi, or not Wi-Fi, over Bluetooth. Using the bigger 2.4 gigahertz antenna on the Bluetooth connection on there. And like I said, it's about 1 out of 5, but it's doable after they polish it.
So you've done it over Bluetooth using the app on the,
Using that RF application
okay,
in an OTG dongle on my phone.
okay. I was curious on that because I did not have a 1 out of 5, I had a 0 out of 5 on it, so.
Like I said, I just switched to a bigger antenna. It
Yeah.
wasn't working with the little flat antenna that they
Yeah.
connected with. I used an SMA adapter and put an after a 2.4 antenna on.
Yeah, that BLE doesn't go very far, so. Questions, any questions?
Who's selling what?
Yeah. Who's next on the mic?
One last question.
Yeah.
In regards to like remote administration, I haven't played around with that at all, but do you have the option to change the client mode?
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah, you can do that via remote administration.
Very good.
And what's even neater is you can change it from Bluetooth mode to Wi-Fi mode, which if you're not thinking right there, all of a sudden you go, whoa, that was neat. It's a good thing I have remote administration up here on the whole thing because I have no other way to talk to it right now. Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask some people, just personal experience here. How many of you guys have run your device in Wi-Fi mode and access it via the what have you? Have you noticed the battery use just like goes nuts on it in Wi-Fi mode versus BLE?
My one that's on Wi-Fi stays plugged in.
Okay, so you have it plugged in. Okay.
It's plugged in with
Yeah.
a 8
Yeah.
giga antenna.
Yeah. So I'm running the 18650s in the LilyGo right there, and I'm getting right at 24 hours when I just run it BLE and everything else and don't spend a bunch of time messing around with it. And I switched it over to my Wi-Fi network because I just wanted to play around with it there. And literally at 10 hours, the thing just totally dumped down there. And so I kind of figured it was because of the Wi-Fi usage, but if other people confirm that in the whole thing, it's interesting.
There was a patch in firmware, they disabled it for, they disabled sleep mode.
Yeah.
So it's not sleeping anymore if you're switching to Wi-Fi.
That's what I figured happened, and so it just stay open the entire time. Other questions?
As a complete noob that like didn't understand 90% of what you said.
My wife.
Yeah, I live out in the country. I'm in the, if you know Norman, we're in the flats. You know, it's a big flood zone. But anyways, big 10 acres. The probability of my neighbors having anything, I mean, it almost be like I would be starting from scratch and
Sure.
have to kind of sell it to my neighbors for this even more. Is that a fair
Yeah,
assumption?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what I would do in that case is provide them a package that has everything in it and say, here, if you just put this up someplace, I'll be eternally grateful, but that way there's no muss or fuss. And you want solar powered, battery, everything goes with it so they don't have to worry about any type of maintenance on anything else. Yeah, funny story, being in amateur radio over the years and everything else and taking care of a fair amount of repeater sites. We got to a point on one of the sites that there had been so many changes in management, we really weren't quite sure who was the person to contact anymore. And one day, all of a sudden, our repeater just went totally off the air. And so I went to the repeater site. Well, it was an outlet just like one of these, except it had a switch next to it for the outlet. And somebody had walked in there, flipped the switch off, had no idea what it was connected to. That's what you open up with when you start having somebody who's hosting you and, oh, I flipped this off, so sorry, and the whole thing. And so it's better just to go self-powered, take care of it. It does its own thing, move on. What's funny about it is they actually flipped the switch on a Monday, and it was the following Friday when we went off the air because we had battery backup on the repeater, and we went all the way through it right there, not knowing that they had turned us off. So.
The unplugged extension cord and it ran for 4 days on battery.
Yeah.
And they called us because the battery backup was beeping.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, they literally walked in, flipped the switch because they didn't know what it was connected to, didn't even know what our equipment was, and the whole thing. And so that happens sometimes depending upon where you're at.
All right, any other questions?
All right. I've got one. Who in the group does not have anything? Who's just starting out?
Cool.
All right. I've got a rack, whiz block, 4630 kit, and an IPIX to N female connector. So you're going to need a power source. You're going to need an antenna and an enclosure. And this will give you something to start out with. There's 2 of you. Pick a number between 1 and 10.
7.
3.
5, what about me?
Somebody's
gonna sell
there's
some
3
of
of you.
this shit.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Okay. Got to write them down this time.
Okay. All right. Pick a number between 1 and 10.
6.
5.
4. It is 6.
We have a winner.
Winner.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's all right.
I'll tell you what, an Altoid can makes a good little container for it.
It does.
Yeah. Is Yuri gonna get? Does he have a?
Yuri, do you have any thoughts for our site in Edmond? You had some mentioned about possibly setting in a role of router because.
Let me get you the microphone. You want to come stand over here? Oh, come on.
Come on down. The price is right for the Wiswalk.
Well, I'm not really public. I'll try. So I have node YDZ2, which is, where is it? Memorial and Bryant. So is it 5 miles from node where it was deployed?
Right about 4.8. Yeah, right at 5.
So, and halfway we have another node, DWB node. So, there is huge problem in Edmond that we cannot just talk between nodes, between west and east side, because I cannot reach like Adam's nodes directly. So it's kind of, it's close.
You call it a black hole, like essentially, right?
Yeah. So partially I blame it on some repeaters or routers setting up around Edmond.
They're preempting everything? Is that
So
what's happening?
how it works, if you have role defined as router or repeater, you have priority. It's period. So clients will not transmit until repeaters done their job. So if you're setting up repeater or router role, you have priority. They just, if they low power nodes, it means they will repeat just small portion. But if you tower node, you will be client. You will be waiting for repeaters to finish. And if client node will hear, that's what you were talking, hidden transmitter, then top node will not even try to.
I saw you posted, like there is like there's a hidden repeater somewhere.
Not one.
Not one? Multiple? Yeah, I wonder if that's what's causing our little issue there.
Well, I'm like down in the valley. That's another issue.
Well, yeah, so am I.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Yeah.
I was able to hit my, before we even got the node installed yesterday, I brought this with me, and I sent a message to my node to nowhere at my house, you know, the one that doesn't go anywhere. And I got a message to it. And I was like, well, okay, this is gonna work. And then I've been trying to get a message back from my house I have a node on a mast up about 30 feet. I've been trying to get a message back to the one we put up yesterday, Chuck's node, and I can't get an ACK from it. And I did get a trace route, and it was 3 hops there and then direct back. So, yeah.
Yeah, same story with me. And if you look at my Discord screenshots, you will see same exact story. So problem will be if there is nearby a repeater somewhere around that new node. So this up node will not be able to help with anything. It will just sit, it will see that it was retransmitted, and it will just
That's it.
Yeah,
Not my job.
yeah,
So
not my
we need to
job.
put it into
Router.
mode. Router and not repeater.
The difference is insignificant. It's just visibility issue.
Yeah, you don't see a repeater. They'll never identify. A router will show.
I got
What's the name of the node?
what is it? DJT?
DJTR.
Yeah.
And we can see your node from there.
Which one?
The one downtown?
Hefner downtown?
Downtown, we can see it.
I want to upgrade the antenna because I've just got a little rubber ducky there right now, but I had to get a good standoff to do that, and I didn't have one until recently.
Okay, I got one right there behind you. That's yours.
So, and
I already have one.
Oh, okay.
So we could probably use this on, yeah, no, I appreciate that, but we can probably use this on another site because I've got all the stuff
Okay,
in mine.
okay.
I just need to talk to Jeff about getting a Raspberry Pi up there to administer because sometimes it's not the easiest to get up there now. It's state run.
We should do that one for Chuck's node too.
so and there
Shower after we did it.
Yeah, I did.
there is also
We gotta put together a bird shit team.
Yeah, there's a lot of bird mess up
Yeah,
there.
birds like to live around
Yep.
places.
If you're not afraid of heights and you want to do a good work for the meth crew, volunteer to go clean up some bird crap over there.
That's right.
My question is, what would be the weight rating on that ladder?
What's that?
What would be the weight rating on that ladder?
Whew, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but there's a couple spots that
Wiggled.
A little wiggle.
Little
Yeah,
wiggle.
little wiggle.
Hey, guys, you guys want to let Yuri finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
you had a completely different issue because you have many clients in one spot. So if you have lots of clients in one area, they will play effect like I described.
Okay.
Furthest node, for example, we have like those are radios. And if I'm transmitting, they will repeat my transmit. They will hear me, but they will look at SNR, and person who has high SNR will wait longer to retransmit. So basically, you will be first person to retransmit.
Yeah, it's to keep it from becoming very local in nature. If you had a bunch like we do today all together, to prevent them from using up all of your hops, and then you'd never get out of here.
So it prioritizes the the highest SNR?
Lowest SNR.
Lowest
SNR.
Okay.
The lowest SNR gets priority so that it can get out of the local area and start going, versus if you had it just hit the first one here, it would use one of those hops,
Yep, that's it.
and then it goes to his 2 inches away, uses another hop,
Right.
and it never makes it to the far
And if you will be hearing his transmission, you will never retransmit.
So how do we fight that?
That it's by switching into client mute when, for example, at home, what I'm using, my main node is client.
Yeah.
By my other nodes, client mute.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too.
Now, client mute.
What it will not do, it will not transmit remote traffic. So basically, it will try to reach only one hop, basically. So basically, it will reach my node, but it will not go directly to other nodes. Or if it will receive something from node that it will receive directly. So what?
You can just never repeat.
Yeah, it will never retransmit what it hears,
From
basically.
the remote ones coming back.
Yeah.
So, like my situation, I have 10 nodes in the same spot, only one in client. If I have all of them in client and I transmit it, it would never make it out because it's jumping within that group.
No, they just hear itself. So they said, oh, transmission went away. So why bother?
If someone can be outside of it and still hear your signal, but you're causing a lot of interference locally.
Yeah, you got a bunch of them all teaming up at once. And if you have a location that's high that can hear all those 10 there, then it's conceivably compromised at that point.
So I kind of like I kind of have the same idea as you guys have. Like this one's in client mute, because like I mean this is kind of like my walkie-talkie one.
Yep.
And I just keep this around me, and I'm not really expecting it to be like
Transmitter,
a
yeah.
retransmitter.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, that's
And then
right.
My node that I have on my my mast at home, I have that one as a client.
Yep.
Because, yeah, that one could do some good. So I guess that's kind of like something we should.
But if you're traveling and it's your car radio, client is perfect.
Client's good too. Yeah. Okay.
Have you experienced the router wait mode yet?
Yeah, I tried.
What was the mode?
It's possible to switch, but I had no. It was working, but I cannot detect whatever.
I was wondering if that would be like the difference that we could use.
Yeah, if somebody wants experiment, they can use CLI to switch to router late. What it does, it waits all transmissions. It will transmit after router, after client, so it will just transmit.
And do we know, I mean, nobody's done any experiments with that yet around here?
There is no way to verify how.
Router late?
They probably don't even add to UI yet, so you cannot just see, but you can do it in firmware via CLI tools.
That's interesting. All right, well, that sounds like that needs, that's what we got to do next for Chuck's is put that in.
Router mode.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I know when I first started getting into this about a year and a half ago, there were a couple not repeaters, but there were a couple routers on Broadway in downtown Edmond.
They might switch.
I wonder if they're still there and they switched to repeater.
Yeah, that might be a worry.
That's interesting. I wish I knew what they were called. 'Cause I
That's
don't
what
see
happens
them
when they're in
anymore.
repeater, because you don't see them.
Yep.
Okay. You will see them in Meshtastic though. You will be able to trace them
Okay.
off that.
No, they are not leaving footprints. You will never know they are there.
Meshtastic doesn't even see repeaters?
Nope.
I thought it would see the.
If you do trace,
Trace.
and if they heard, then
You have to do a trace, they'll hear it, you'll see them.
But most of the time we are not hearing them because they are localized.
They're in a localized area. You'd have to be where they're at in order
Yep,
to pick them up.
exactly.
So you'd have to do some more driving.
So, but they are not leaving footprints. So you just need use radio signal
Or
to.
we can change our channel.
Good luck. All right.
That's it.
Okay, thanks, Yuri.
Yeah, glad to have you here, Yuri. See your postings on Facebook.
Thanks.
We'll give it back to Roy here.
All right.
There you go.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you is how did you determine the coverage needs in Tulsa? Are you using any RF software propagation
Yeah,
mapping?
we're using, it's RM is the name of it. So what's it called? Something mobile. I'm trying to remember that. You know what I'm talking about.
Is it radio mobile?
Radio
online?
mobile. Radio mobile.
Radio
We use
mobile,
radio mobile
okay.
to figure out what the coverage is going to be and things of that sort.
Okay.
And then the other thing that we'll do, there's 2 or 3 different softwares out there. The easiest way to do is to plot your 2 locations and then sit there and have elevation, and see if there's things in between there.
Okay.
And then that way you kind of understand, hey, there's a ridge line over here, but if I go over here, I miss that ridge line, you know. So a lot of times we look at, because like in Tulsa, there's a ridge line right in the middle of the town, and there's certain parts where you can get around it, but you have to know exactly where you're at in your line distance between the 2. He's got his hand up back there.
Meshtastic also released a node planning application that helps you plan nodes.
Where is it located? Is it on the Meshtastic side? Cool.
Okay.
Even
Just
better.
saying
Okay.
that Meshtastic released a
Node
node
plan.
planning. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's one of the things I'd like to do. If anyone would volunteer or want to be a part of that to help us identify some strategic locations in Oklahoma City and see what we can do as far as leveraging the relationships we all have within the group with gaining access to structures. And then let's put together a team. We'll get together the materials and let's build a site. So that's some of the things that I want, that's some of the things maybe as we move forward in the next month. We start working on coverage planning, identifying sites, and deploy a few more strategic locations. So, anyone that wants to get involved in that, let's just, communicate after the meeting, and we'll get something put together. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy. Is anybody else here,
I'm still with
part of
this
the
meeting.
Oklahoma City GMRS group? One, two, I never met at the last time. we
I'll jump on
met.
the minutes, but I mean, I'm not.
No?
I just listen.
Okay. Are there any plans on putting a node, somewheres, is there a node off of Lincoln?
That's the tower I am talking about.
Is there?
Well, we also have a 100-foot tower on Santa Fe that's very close to Elmo's old place that we have full access to. I have everything made, I just haven't had good weather to get it there.
The 651 computer at that radio HQ, there's a 900 megahertz on that tower.
Okay.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.
The really good part about yesterday was the climb was inside.
Yeah. Okay, I don't really have anything else. Chris?
That website is site.meshtastic.org to get to the node for
Site.meshtastic.org.
Site.meshtastic.org.
Okay. Yeah. All right, well, thank you guys for coming out, and we'll do this again in another month, and we'll just communicate within the group here and, try to determine some locations to put some sites up. And I know I know Steven and Chuck and I are willing to climb and, do some installs there. And so, yeah, just communicate within the group, and we'll see you guys again in another month. All right, thanks for attending.
Thank you guys.
Also, your information will be on Facebook page.
We have Facebook.